you'll find tonight on the NewsHour's website. But for now, back to Gwen.
And now to the politics of national security, especially the role Congress plays. For that, we're joined by New Jersey Democrat Bill Pascrell Jr., a member of the House Homeland Security Committee, and Utah Republican Jason Chaffetz, who serves on the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Congressman Chaffetz, I want to start with you because you were the sponsor of the bill in Congress which forbade the use of these whole body scanners. You heard Governor Thompson, the former member of the 9/11 Commission, say that you and others in the media, he said, were spooked by privacy extremists. Do you agree with him on that? Obviously not, I'm thinking.
Well, you have to understand the actual bill. The bill itself was not a ban on the use of the machines. What it says, you couldn't use it as a mandatory primary screening, but absolutely use it on secondary screening. And this case on the 25th, this guy was a poster child of who should have gone through the secondary screening. Absolutely, these machines should be deployed nationwide. They should be deployed internationally, and we have reason to use them. Absolutely use them.
Congressman Pascrell.
But the 99% of Americans, I don't think you have to use it on every single person.
Pardon me for the interruption. Congressman Pascrell, you voted for it as well. Would you vote for it again today?
Well, I voted for the amendment. I voted for the legislation that did pass. It was an authorization, not an appropriation. And since the time we've had that vote in the Congress, I've learned a lot more about what machines we're talking about, the very expensive machines. And I think we can find a way to protect people's privacy, either by putting the observer in another room, number one, having a gender-oriented machinery, and obviously destroying the image afterwards. Whatever we need to do to protect Americans, citizens, I think is very critical, Gwen. So I would revisit this particular amendment, and I think Mr. Chaffetz offered it in good faith, and I have every right to re-examine it. Passed, by the way, with overwhelming support.
Congressman Chaffetz, as you know, in Washington, fingers are being pointed every which way in the wake of this attempted terrorist attack. Who would you say needs to be first up in terms of explaining what happened and what didn't happen?
Well, I'd like to bring in the Secretary of Homeland Security. I think she needs to explain why initially she said everything worked and then suddenly changed her mind. But really, there are so many risk factors. We need to understand why this gentleman, he was even able to get to the airport. Why was he given a visa? Imagine the humility of the father coming into the embassy and trying to explain to the case officer there the problems that he's having with his son and why that information wasn't passed along. I think the Secretary, probably more than anybody, should really come before Congress sooner rather than later and explain what happened and where all this breakdown occurred.
Congressman Pascrell, there's also an outfit called the National Counterterrorism Center. Do you have questions for them?
Yes, what I responded to was the fact that everybody who's in Homeland Security should be under the glass. Nobody escapes here. But remember, Secretary Napolitano does not have control over all of the intelligence agencies. They're lucky if they talk to one another, and we've been trying to force the issue in Homeland Security. I've been on this committee since its very inception. And if you don't have cooperation, Gwen, you don't have anything. You can set up all the apparatus in the world. We don't have control over the screening in other countries, and we need to remember this as well. There is no question that this character from Nigeria should never have been allowed on an airplane. It should have been on the no-fly list. We're trying to find out right now, as we speak, why he was allowed to get on a plane, what kind of visa he did have. We're going to have a hearing in Homeland Security last week of January. We will examine this and bring people before the committee. I think Chairman Thompson is from Mississippi, is right on course to do this. We've had bipartisan support of Homeland Security since 9/11. What I have heard in the last 6 days is reprehensible. You have a senator from South Carolina who stood in the way of the TSA director being appointed, and for political reasons. And I don't think that's right at all. We can start. There's plenty of fingers to go around here and plenty of blame, but the point is we should be on that and be trying to together defend the American people and support protecting American people. That's what I'm all about. and Jason will speak for himself.
Congressman Chaffetz, do want to ask you about that, but also speak for yourself. But I want to ask you about the degree to which you think that the intelligence piece of this is a problem. In particular, we heard today that the Central Intelligence Agency may have been alerted as long ago as August about an unspecified Nigerian who they were keeping, and they should keep an eye on. And you put that together with all the other pieces we now know about, it seems that the CIA is under the magnifying glass as well.
Well, we're going to need to lower the bar in terms of who gets on that list to identify people who need secondary screening, because I think the secondary screening would have caught this guy. There were whole body imaging machines both in Nigeria and in Amsterdam. We got to question why those weren't used. We're going to have to demand more out of our international partners in terms of actual screening, and just make sure that they're communicating. It seems easy enough to put them on the list. And then of the 550,000 people that we know are on the watch list, who's watching the people on the watch list? It seems that we're maybe a little bit too politically correct along the way, and we're going to need to start targeting these terrorists and understand that we're at war. They want to kill us.
So you think profiling is something that should be embraced?
Well, we got to be very careful. I don't want there to be profiling based solely on race or ethnicity or religion. But I do think we can profile terrorists and potential terrorists and go through a much more rigorous screening. I don't see any other way around it.
Congressman Pascrell, so far, and it's only been a few days, do you think that this administration has been acting quickly enough and thoroughly enough to address what is now turning into a bigger and bigger problem?
And the president is on this case. There's no question about it in my mind. I talked to those people in intelligence who are in Hawaii with the president right now. He doesn't have to be in Washington to be on top of this. The question is, we need quick answers, and the president's going to get his answers tomorrow as to who dropped the ball. I really support our intelligence agencies, but we have not yet gone over the hurdle of getting them to talk with one another. Obviously, somebody dropped the ball here. But the point fingers at the secretary, the point fingers at Secretary Napolitano, I think is very shortchanged. If she blew this, I'll be the first one to ask for her resignation, because we cannot have second chances right now. But they'll simply be pointing fingers. And I'm glad that Jason said what he did about profiling. The only thing we should do with profiling is behavioral profiling. If there's behavioral examples, then we have every right, and we should not concern ourselves with being politically correct. I would believe that behavioral profiling is accepted and should be followed in every sense of the term.
Congressman Chaffetz, I'm curious what the administration's been doing. You may be aware of former Vice President Cheney's criticism today that he believes that the administration response was too slow.
Well, they're going to have to take some personal responsibility. I guess what's so troubling is that the day after the event, you had the Homeland Security Director say that everything worked okay. And then come back just 24 hours later. Well, again, I've got questions. And what I'm encouraging them to do, I don't want to just take a cheap shot at them. I want them to come to Capitol Hill and answer the hard questions before Judiciary, before Homeland Security, and come before Oversight and Government Reform. I think that's the proper political way to do it without just, throwing political barbs at each other.
Members of Congress, Bill Pascrell and Jason Chaffetz, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.